Hello, human anatomy and physiology students. Today we're going to take a journey through the body cavities. All right, we're going to learn the different terms, the different regions, and we've got a sketch going to be due right after we finish some of these notes. So let's roll. Let's get on with it. Okay, the body cavities. You'll see up top here, it states it contains viscera. All right, viscera are internal soft organs. If you remember from our introductory notes, that the Egyptians would remove the viscera. That's what we're talking about here. All right, it's located in the large body cavity of the trunk. So here we go for body cavities. We've got the dorsal body cavity, the cranial body cavity, which contains the brain, the vertebral or spinal cavity, which contains the spinal cord. And this diagram over here is excellent if you take a look at it over here. All right, we've got the cranial cavity here, which obviously contains the brain, and you can see the spinal cord comes down through here. And you'll notice that it's curved. It's got this S shape that goes to it. It's not straight down. We'll talk about that when we get to bones. We've got the thoracic cavity, which is in the chest, because you know that term now, thoracic, and you know the abdominal or umbilical region, which is down here, and in the pelvic cavity. All right, these key terms here, these key cavities, we're going to need to know. So make sure you pick those up. Okay, now we're moving to the ventral body cavity. Remember, ventral means this view here, right, on us. The two major subdivisions of the ventral body cavity are separated by the diaphragm. So the diaphragm, which we'll cut, you know where it is. Feel your ribs. You can feel your xiphoid process, that little part that sticks out. Right underneath there is where the diaphragm is. Diaphragm is a dome-shaped muscular partition needed for breathing, and it's a muscle. We'll talk about that when we get to muscles. It'll divide it into a upper, which is a superior half, and a lower, which is an inferior half. That's what the body cavities are divided in. The thoracic cavity is the superior division, surrounded by the ribs and muscles of the chest. Contains lateral pleural cavities that house the lungs within the membranes. The membranes that house the lungs are called pleura. All right? Pleura are the cavity the lungs are in. The ventral body cavity also contains something called the mediastinum. And that's this word here, mediastinum. All right, that's the region between the lungs. Contains the heart, trachea, and other organs. The heart is contained within the pericardial cavity, formed within membranes called the pericardium. So we're actually going to dissect the heart when we get back to school together, and you're going to see the pericardium is going to be all over the heart. We're actually going to have to peel it off to get to our structures that we need to look at, which is going to be pretty cool and pretty fun. All right, here are some different views of the cavities. Now, focusing one on the right over here, this diagram, this is one of them that you're going to recreate for your next sketch. You can see that the mediastinum is located here and it's in yellow. And when you recreate this, you also want to color code this as well. Whatever colors you want. This is just what the book uses. They use yellow here and they use blue here for the lungs. You'll see the pleural cavity around the outside here, the pericardial cavity in here, the diaphragm which separates them into the superior region and the inferior region. You'll notice the inferior region, the abdominal cavity, doesn't have anything listed in it here now. It's where our organs are going to be. And then the pelvic cavity, which is going to be down below here. Now, if you look at it from the sagittal view cut over on this side, you can see the cranial cavity, vertebral cavity, all the other stuff that we discussed already, including the diagrams that you see in this view. I just think that this view is a little easier to understand exactly what's going on between the thoracic and abdominal pelvic cavities. Okay, that'll bring us to the abdominal pelvic cavity and the two major subdivisions of the abdominal pelvic cavity. We've got abdominal pelvic cavity houses or contains. Whenever you see something that says houses, it means that it has it in it. All right, the liver, stomach, spleen, intestines, the kidneys, it's protected only by trunk muscles. So there's no ribs that protect the abdominal pelvic cavity. There's no bones that protect it there. So it's very vulnerable. The pelvic cavity houses the bladder, the rectum, female reproductive organs, internal male reproductive organs, and is somewhat protected by the bony pelvis. And we'll see that when we get to the bones, how it's kind of protected, but the bladder is kind of exposed because it's also a little more superior. No physical structure separates the abdominal from pelvic cavities. Remember, the diaphragm separated the thoracic and abdominal pelvic cavities, or abdominal cavity. There's nothing that separates these two here. They kind of go, they're kind of pretty close together. Okay, here you will see 9 abdominal pelvic regions. Now remember, when you're looking at these, you're looking at the patient's right and left, and it messes people up all the time. All right, we've got the right hypochondriac region, epigastric region right in the middle there, a left hypochondriac region. And when you draw this will be the second part of your diagram. This is kind of set up like a tic-tac-toe board, right? And it's got the 9 regions that are in it. The right lumbar region, you know the terms now, you know what lumbar means. The umbilical region, right through the umbilicus or navel. The left lumbar region. The right iliac region. The iliac because that's the name of this hip bone. It's called the iliac. The ischium is the lower part. Hypogastric region and the left iliac region. So these 9 regions you're going to be responsible for. It's pretty easy to learn once you start looking at them. That one shouldn't be too bad for you. Okay, so now assignment time. For the next sketch in our sketchbook, all right, you're going to create 2 diagrams on one page that look like the 2 we saw today. All right, and those 2 are going to be this guy here, the abdominal pelvic regions, all right? So if you separate your page here and you separate it in half, on the one side you'll have the abdominal pelvic regions that'll look like this. And the next one will look like this. All right, the regions that are color-coded so you know exactly where they are. All right, that's not too bad. Fit them both on one page. You have quite a few days. If we're doing this on Friday, which I plan to, so hopefully it is, it'll be due on Wednesday by midnight. All right, if you have any questions, please ask. Other than that, hopefully you learned something about the cavities. Now bring it on back into the Google Meet. See ya.